Hey, a lot of my clients are heading out for trade shows and continuing education events, and they're calling about how to write off travel expenses. So I thought I'd put a quick video together today to help you identify a couple tips that might save you some money. So today's video is going to be about domestic travel. Most of my clients are going domestically for business events. If you're going internationally, it's separate regulations around that. Have a great time. But today we're just talking about domestic. So within the domestic travel category, I like to separate our conversation into two types of domestic travel. The first type of travel would be 100% business travel, meaning you're going to and from the event. You're not adding on days before or after. And that's a pretty straightforward discussion, but I do have one tip in that category I think you might find useful. The second category is my favorite category of business travel, and that's where you co-mix personal and business travel. I think it's one of the greatest benefits of being a business owner. And learning these regulations really can help you take advantage of some tax savings that non-business owners just quite frankly never are going to see. So let's talk about 100% business travel. You go out to the event, you come back. Certainly your transportation to or from the event is wrote off. The hotel while you're there is wrote off. Your meals while you're there are wrote off. Now we're back in 2023, so you're only going to get 50% of those expenses. But my tip here is to introduce a concept called the meals and incidental rates, or the government per diem rates, available on the GSA, which stands for the General Service Administration websites. So similar to how you have a choice of using actual expenses or standard mileage rates for your automobile deduction, you have the ability to take actual meal expenses while you travel or a per diem amount. Now the per diem amounts are set by location, meaning by city, and that's because some cities, food is just more expensive than others. But right now I'm looking at Boca Raton, and the per diem meals and incidental. When they say incidental, that's like tips. It's tips primarily. So for that, it's $69 a day. That covers your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So most people will say, well, that's not a lot of money. I'll probably spend more than that. Well, certainly big eaters will do that, but there's a lot of people that aren't eating as much, maybe eating one meal a day or 2 meals a day. And fasting's popular. Right now I'm doing a 24-hour fast. If I was traveling, I might have, a cup of green tea, a cup of coffee throughout the day. My actual expenses would be $10 compared to 69. So in that case, it'd be a $59 increase in my deductions. Again, 50% of that, so I guess 59, would only be $30 increase in deductions. But just a tip, particularly if you're going to be gone for a long trip and you're a light eater, or if you like just eating at your hotel and maybe just grabbing something from a grocery store. A lot of times you'll save some money that way. I want to point out on the government's website, there is also a per diem amount allowed for hotels. Now, this is great too. The only issue is if you're the business owner, you're not able to use the per diem amount. You have to use the actual amount. Okay, that's my tip for 100% business travel. Now, let's talk about mixed business travel. For that, to unpack it, there's a lot here, but the first concept is that the government treats deductibility for travel different than hotel and meals while you're there. So for travel, you have to spend at least 50% of the time while you're gone out of the office doing business. So if you go away for 10 days, let's say, 7-day a week plus 3 days for personal stuff, it would be 30% business, 30% personal versus 70% business. In that event, you would write off 100%, not 70%, 100% of your travel expenses. So as long as you're more than 50% business, you can write off the travel expenses. Now, the 50% rule applies also to the hotel and to the meals and to your Ubers, in that you have to spend over 50% of the time that day conducting business to be able to write those things off. So the days that you're doing personal things, you're out sightseeing before or after, you're going to have to cover the hotel and the meals, out of personal funds, or you're not going to be able to write them off on your tax return. Okay. So with that framework in mind, I'm going to give you 2 tips. First of all, the government doesn't specify the mode of transportation you take to or from an event. So if you choose to take a train or a car to an event, your transportation days are considered business travel. So, for example, I am going to a trade show down in Dallas this year, and I have friends that are along the path, my direct path down to Dallas, in Memphis and in Mississippi. Instead of taking, let's say, 1 day for business travel, or it would actually be 1 day for travel, 1 day before and 1 after, 3 days for business travel. If you're taking a plane, it might be, 2 days down, 2 days up, or 3 days up and 3 days back. So I actually would be doing business for 6 days just in my transportation. And, as long as I'm spending more than 4 hours a day moving myself towards that trade show, it's considered a business day, and I can write off the hotels, my meals, and, if I happen to visit with for a friend or stop for sightseeing. So, I've heard of a doctor riding from New York to San Francisco and stopping at the Grand Canyon for 2 days with their families. Okay. Obviously, if you're off path by a day or two, those days where you're traveling from, the interstate down to the Grand Canyon, you're not going to be able to write those off, but the transportation across country is all deductible. So that's a pretty cool little loophole if you have extra time on your hands. The second loophole that I like to, or kind of exception that I like to talk to, is I got a deal exception. So oftentimes air flights are more expensive during the weekdays and less expensive on weekends, because there's a lot of business travel. So, for example, if you're flying out on a Sunday to go to a training event Monday through Friday, and you look at the flight flying back on Friday night, and it's, say, $800 or $900, okay? And compare that to flying back on a Monday morning, meaning you spend the weekend there, and you fly back on a Monday, and all of a sudden the flight drops down to $350. Well, $900 versus $350 is a $550 tax savings. So the government says if you want to save your business $550, you can stay the weekend and write off your hotels and meals. Now, the caveat there is that you save $550. I always tell clients you can write off $550 of incremental hotel expenses and meals and Uber expenses. So that's a tip of a way that, you can spend the extra weekend doing something, maybe somewhere fun that you've always wanted to visit, and get to write off the taxes. You just have to document in your file that the flights were a lot more expensive coming back earlier, and by postponing, you saved your company money. So that's my 3 tax tips for people traveling. Have a good time out there. Take care.